that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
I'm dying of heat. It is so hot. Welcome back to the Halo Expanded Universe. Halo Mortal Dicata by Karen Traviss. The third book in a trilogy, the Kilo 5 trilogy. I just want to start off by saying, so far, that this artwork with the little girl in the red dress, Naomi, and the Spartan helmet that she's looking down at, and the people in the background walking past her. So I'm looking at her. Has to be one of the most gorgeous covers that I've seen for Star Wars, for Halo, for anything. I love the cover. Kilo 5 trilogy has been kind of a setting you up for Halo 4 sort of thing. The first one was showing us the world currently after the events of Halo 3. Very much so, gave us a lot of Arbiter, gave us a lot of other things. Is very much a continuation of 3. Along with being a conclusion to Ghost of Onyx. So I find that absolutely essential. Even if you have been hating the Halsey bashing, and I get it, Glasslands is essential for understanding the current political landscape of Halo 4, along with Thursday War, which is mostly its own original story. But it does have Jewel Mandama, who is, people complained. This one thing I remember hearing all the time in like old YouTube reviews of Halo 4. We defeated the Covenant. Why is the Covenant back? Blah, 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 blah. Well, it's not the Covenant. It's a splinter faction group led by Jewel Mandama. And you get to learn about him and his beliefs and his reasonings in Glasslands, but especially in the Thursday War. Hold on. Anyway, I feel that Glasslands and Thursday War are actually very important. You have the Forerunner Trilogy by Greg Bear, which gives you a lot of information on the ancient past, gives you answers to the Halo rings, and gives you answers as to who the Didact is, and his motivations, and his beliefs, as you head into Halo 4. You shouldn't need that to enjoy Halo 4, but it's an expanded universe. That's something I feel you should read, if you care about reading the expanded lore. If you want to know what's going on present day wise, I do feel these first 2 books are essential in understanding the surrounding context of Halo 4. Mortal Dicata. You don't need it. Everything you need to know is already said in the previous books. Saren Osman is going to become the leader of Oni once Parangoski gives her that position and she retires. It's going to be Saren's. We already know this. This is going to happen. There are some things left unresolved if you don't read this. You don't know what's going on with Naomi and her family origins and all that stuff. But you don't need it to understand the plot of Halo 4. But if you've been invested in the past 2 books in these new characters, like I love Philip, I love BB, the AI. I think Saren Osman really grew on me. Vaz and Mal, the ODSTs, they grew on me. I think the weakest part of this book is there's this, subplot with the Kigyar, which it was fun to read, and it's nice to get the Kigyar's perspective, Kigyar being the Jackals, because they don't get too much, love. But it was good to see them, and it was a nice little part. But I was most invested in our core set of characters. This is very much a soap opera, though. I think the Thursday War was the least Halsey bashing and the least actually dealing with that, because I had a lot of other things to talk about, which was great. You know, and this really started to show that Oni may be, you know, a villain, which is great. But Mortal Dicata is really a personal story about a father that misses his daughter and trying to get Pious Inquisitorship and that's all secondary to that is the focal point and the horribleness of the Spartan 2 program. If that sounds interesting to you at all, I do recommend it. Again, I've said this in my previous reviews. Do I think that Karen Traviss is a little heavy-handed? Yes, very much so. I'm in like complete agreement with Traviss, and yet it still feels a bit too much. Like, it's not even that I necessarily disagree, but they compare, or she compares Halsey to her journal to Mein Kampf. It's a little much. I get it, but like, comes off as a little bit cringy. But I don't mind it here because everyone who's saying it is her own original characters. You know, people who it makes sense for them to feel this way. Like, if she was writing Master Chief this way, I'd have an issue. Because he just wouldn't think that way. Or Fred, or Linda. Because even still, in Glasslands, when she wrote Fred and Linda and Kelly, they still remained pretty faithful and in love with Halsey. You know, she let that remain. She just made sure that all of her characters rectified that real quick. And so while I get it, I understand the hate behind this trilogy is very controversial because it's Karen Traviss, and Karen Traviss likes to constantly moralize. She did the same thing in Republic Commando, but here I feel it's a bit more justified because the institution is very great, whereas the Jedi were very flawed in the prequels. But the key, this is the same problem with the Acolyte, is that they had their hearts in the right place. They weren't trying to be villains. They had no intention of being villainous. And they're always usually in the right. They're usually in the light. But Halsey would just, Travis would just constantly berate the Jedi and everything, you know? So it was a little much. I don't know about the Gears of War books, but it doesn't matter because she's the sole writer of that, and I'm pretty sure the Gears of War franchise is pretty much in line with her views anyway, so. Anyway, point being, if you've liked the previous two books, you're gonna enjoy this one. If you've been getting really pissed off at the previous two books, you can skip this one. And this can be it for non-spoilers. If you don't want spoilers, there's the door. I'm gonna be here too long, but we start with learning about Staffan Zensky, who's the father to Naomi, Spartan 2. And we get this really heart-wrenching opening section. This is way before the insurrectionists. This is way before the Covenant War in the video games. This is about a day that his daughter went to school and never came back home. Because she was abducted. And then they found their daughter. She was at the hospital, they checked in on her, but she didn't seem the same. The mother was relieved. He wasn't. He felt something was off. And then his daughter died. His wife couldn't bear it. She kills herself. And yet the father, 35 years later to this day, still believes his daughter was taken from him. And that the one who died was not his daughter, but a clone. And how absolutely right he is about that. But that's what we get introduced to. And what is he now? Insurrectionists. And as I said, we get a lot of things with the Kig-Yar and skirmishers from Halo Reach, which is really cool. They do a good job of humanizing the Kig-Yar. Is that racist? Humanizing? You know, they make us sympathize with the Kig-Yar. We haven't really had that before. We had some Kig-Yar characters or Jackal characters in like Contact Harvest, but they weren't meant to be like, you could feel a little sympathetic for them, but at the end of the day, they were still villains. So it was nice to see like some of this building up their characters here and making them more than just cannon fodder. And there's a lot of that in the book. There's a lot of moralizing. There's a lot of talking. There's not a lot happening. But they come down to where Staffan's at, and they try to do some recon and be undercover. But eventually, Staffan's smart. He figures it out, and he goes to interrogate Vaz and Mal, the two ODSTs. There's a very visceral beating scene for Vaz, and it's very uncomfortable. But between all this, Vaz is feeling guilty regardless, and he tells Staffan that his daughter's alive. And then we get to the reunion between Staffan and Naomi, and that was really just good writing. I mean, I know people are like, but like, the Spartans over it. Yeah, a lot of them are. Like, Chief's kind of resigned his fate. Same with Fred, Linda, and Kelly. But at the same time, if you're going to redress it, wouldn't it be now? When you don't have a big giant war to fight? The war's over. If there's any time to address this drama, it's now. And so, learning that, and this is stuff that I already know, but to learn that your daughter's sterilized, she's been bred to fight, she's going to really live a normal life even if she wanted to. What would she go back to? She couldn't. Her whole life's been the military. Having to say goodbye to his daughter for a third time as if she's dying all over again. It's good stuff. It's heart-wrenching stuff. And yeah, it needed to be addressed. Eric Nyland mainly just brushed it aside. Now do I feel that Karen Traviss a little over-rectifies that by... Yeah, a little bit. But her heart's in the right place. Naomi has a memory of when she was a little girl, and somebody was trying to undress her. So she fought. And that's why they said they saw her on the side of the road, or whatever. Because they had to really, fight her to get her to calm down. Staffan knows that he'll be detained forever. He's never going to be allowed to go into his family with the stuff that he knows. So he decides to sacrifice himself instead. But BB, who was really grown on me, he's probably, my favorite new character from this trilogy, next to Philip. But he's too human at this point. Kind of like Cortana. And he won't let him die. But he says, I can let everybody think that you're dead. And you can go live with your family. So that's what happens. And then we also learn about Osmond's history. And we learn that Osmond, for all the hate that she gives to Halsey, and this includes Karen Traviss, at the same time, Halsey kind of saved Osmond. She had a prostitute mother who was also a big druggie and was neglectful, didn't take care of her kid, might have even hit her, if not her boyfriends at least. And she was constantly starving. She'd dig out the trash. The only one who looked out for her was her teacher. So they didn't even bother making a clone of Osmond. Why? No one's going to miss her. When she gone missing, people assumed the worst. Moved on. So in a sense, despite how bad Halsey might be, Halsey's decision, even though it didn't work out properly because she didn't actually become a Spartan 2, gave Osmond a much better life. Let me get to the end of the book, the epilogue, which is a suicide note by this guy named Graham. I realize at the end that this is the guy whose personality Parangosky used to make BB. It all comes full circle. Overall, personally, I really enjoyed it. It's a little slow, kind of drags, but I enjoyed it a lot. I think it's Thursday War. Moral Dicata. I think it's Glasslands, Mortal Dicata, and then the Thursday War for me, in terms of ranking from best to worst, though I like them all. But yeah, overall I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I read this trilogy. I know a lot of people hate it because of what it does with Halsey, but I think it needed to be said. And if it was the only time that it gets this in depth with it, then so be it. but I'm glad it was allowed to be made. I'm personally a fan. Thank you, Travis. And thank you, Halo writers or people, for letting her write it. I enjoyed it. Up next, we have Halo Last Light. Troy Denning's first array into the Halo universe. See you when we finish the fight.